It was a bright and sunny morning in June. The city of Boston felt alive, with people walking briskly along the streets, the breeze carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers. In a luxurious suite at the Four Seasons Hotel, Eliza Harrison stood in front of a large oval mirror. She was dressed in her perfect white wedding gown, one she had searched for months to find. The dress fit her like a dream, hugging her figure gracefully and shimmering with tiny crystals that sparkled in the sunlight streaming through the wide windows. Her mother, Vivian, stood behind her, holding back tears that were already rolling down her cheeks. "You look so beautiful, my child," Vivian whispered softly, reaching out to tuck a stray curl of Eliza's hair back into place. Eliza smiled at her reflection, practicing the radiant look she would wear as she walked down the aisle in just a few hours. Her phone vibrated on the nearby table. It was the fifth time that morning, but Eliza ignored it. She wanted to focus on her big day, the day she had been dreaming of for years. At 32 years old, Eliza was finally marrying the love of her life, Sebastian Romano. He was a successful Italian-American businessman she had met 2 years ago at a conference in Chicago. From the moment they met, she felt like she had found her perfect match. The sixth time the phone buzzed, Vivian picked it up. "Let me answer this one," she said gently. Eliza nodded and turned back to the mirror. She watched in the reflection as her mother's face suddenly turned pale. Vivian's voice shook as she said, "What do you mean? No, that can't be true." Eliza turned around slowly, her heart sinking. "Mom, what's wrong?" Vivian hesitated, her lips trembling. Then she said the words that would change everything. "Sebastian isn't coming. He's gone to New York. He sent an email saying he's back with his ex-wife, Christina." The room seemed to spin around Eliza. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Her perfect day, the one she had dreamed of for so long, was falling apart. She looked at herself in the mirror again, but this time she didn't see a glowing bride. She saw a broken woman in a wedding dress. Outside, the sounds of people arriving for the wedding grew louder. Friends, family, and other guests were gathering, excited for what they believed would be the celebration of the year. Eliza stood frozen for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I have to tell them," she said firmly. "No, dear," Vivian said, trying to stop her. "Let me handle it." But Eliza was already walking out the door. She didn't want to hide. She wanted to face this head on. In the hotel's grand hall, everything was decorated beautifully with white orchids and sparkling crystals. The guests turned to look at Eliza as she appeared at the top of the staircase. There was a moment of stunned silence. Everyone expected to see the glowing bride heading to her limousine. Instead, they saw a woman with tears in her eyes, but her head held high. "The wedding is canceled," Eliza announced, her voice strong and clear. "Sebastian has chosen to be with someone else. Thank you all for coming, but please return to your homes." A ripple of shock and murmurs spread through the room. Eliza's eyes scanned the crowd, and that's when she saw him. Liam Foster, her childhood friend. He stood near the entrance, looking at her with the same kind, concerned expression he had always worn when they were kids. After the guests left, Eliza sat in an empty chair in the lobby. The room that had once been full of laughter and excitement was now quiet and cold. Liam walked over and sat down beside her without saying a word. "Did you know this could happen?" Eliza asked quietly, staring at her hands. "No," Liam replied honestly, "but I always knew you deserved better." Eliza felt the tears she had been holding back start to fall. For hours, she had stayed strong in front of everyone, but now, in front of Liam, she let herself cry. Liam didn't say anything. He just sat there, offering his silent support like he always had. A week later, Eliza was back at work. She sat in her office in a tall glass building in Boston, trying to focus on the numbers on her computer screen. She owned a company that helped startups with financial planning, and work had always been her escape. Her secretary, Sophie, knocked softly on the door. "Miss Harrison, I brought your coffee," she said, placing a steaming cup on the desk. Then she added hesitantly, "Another bouquet of flowers arrived." Eliza sighed. It was the 10th time Sebastian had sent flowers, trying to apologize for what he had done. "Send them to a hospital," Eliza said without looking up. "There's also a letter," Sophie added. "Burn it," Eliza said sharply. Sophie hesitated again. "It's from Mr. Foster." Hearing Liam's name made Eliza pause. She looked up, and Sophie handed her the envelope. Eliza opened it carefully. Inside was a simple card with Liam's familiar handwriting. It read, "Remember when we were kids and you broke your arm trying to save that cat from the tree? You didn't cry because it hurt. You cried because you thought you couldn't help the cat. But the next day, even with your arm in a cast, you tried again. That's who you are. Don't give up. Lunch today?" For the first time in days, Eliza smiled. She grabbed her phone and texted him back. "Noon, the cafe on Charles Street." When Eliza arrived at the cafe, Liam was already there, sitting at a small table in the corner. He stood up when he saw her and smiled warmly. "How are you?" he asked as she sat down. "He posted a picture with her," Eliza said suddenly, referring to Sebastian. Her voice shook. "It's like I never existed." Liam didn't say anything right away. He just looked at her with understanding eyes. Then he said, "Do you still like hot chocolate? Remember how we used to drink it after school?" Eliza laughed a little. "You still remember that?" "I remember everything," Liam replied. They spent the next hour talking. Liam told her funny stories about their childhood and his work as an architect. He avoided talking about love or weddings, knowing it would hurt her. "How's your mom?" Eliza asked when dessert arrived. Liam smiled. "She still asks why we didn't get married." Eliza looked down, her face serious. "Everyone thought we would, even my mom. But I was so young back then. I didn't understand what real love was. I thought it had to be like the movies, big and dramatic. I didn't realize it could be quiet and steady, like you." Liam's heart raced, but he stayed silent. "And now?" he finally asked. Eliza looked into his eyes. "Now, I'm not the same person I used to be. I'm hurt, and I have scars that you can't see." Liam reached out and touched her hand gently. "Scars make us stronger. You're still the bravest person I know." Just then, Eliza's phone buzzed again. It was an email from Sebastian asking for another chance. Eliza stared at the screen for a long time. Then she locked her phone and put it away. "I need to get back to work," she said, standing up. Liam stood too. "Eliza," he said softly as she turned to leave, "that cat you tried to save when we were kids, it climbed down by itself the next morning. Sometimes things work themselves out. You just have to give them time." Eliza gave him a small smile. As she walked out of the cafe, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. Eliza felt tears in her eyes, but these tears were different from the ones she had cried all week. This time, they weren't sad tears. They were tears of understanding, as if she had suddenly realized something big about herself. Maybe, just maybe, her real strength wasn't in trying to fix everything for others. Maybe her strength was in letting someone help her fix herself. It was autumn in Boston, and the city was full of beautiful colors. The trees were orange, yellow, and red, and the air smelled fresh and crisp. But for Eliza, the season was bittersweet. It reminded her of things she didn't want to think about. It had been 2 months since her wedding was canceled, and it felt like the city was playing tricks on her, trying to remind her of Sebastian at every corner. She saw the Italian restaurant where they had their first date. She passed the park where he had knelt down and proposed to her. She even walked by the old gallery where they used to go on lazy afternoons, dreaming about their future together. Suddenly, Sophie, her assistant, interrupted her thoughts. "Mr. Romano is on the phone," Sophie said. Eliza's heart skipped a beat. Sebastian had been trying to call her for weeks, but she had ignored every attempt. Somehow, he had found a way to get through. He must have used a different number. "Tell him I'm in a meeting," Eliza said quickly. Sophie hesitated, her expression serious. "He said it's about the apartment." The apartment. Eliza closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. She knew exactly what Sebastian was talking about. The fancy penthouse they had bought together in Back Bay. It was still full of boxes packed with the things they had picked out for their future life together. "Put him through," she said finally. When Eliza heard Sebastian's voice, it made her heart ache just a little. "Eliza," he began, his voice soft. She interrupted him before he could say more. "My lawyers will handle everything," she said in a cold, professional tone. "They'll deal with selling the apartment and dividing our things." "It's not about that," Sebastian said quickly. His voice sounded different, almost fragile. Then, after a pause, he said something Eliza hadn't expected. "Christina, she left me." For a moment, Eliza was silent. Christina was the woman Sebastian had left Eliza for. Hearing that Christina had abandoned him stirred up a mix of feelings inside her. There was a little bit of satisfaction, a twinge of anger, and still, even now, a tiny bit of pain. "I'm sorry," Eliza said, and to her own surprise, she meant it. But she quickly added, "That doesn't change anything between us." "Eliza, please," Sebastian begged. "I made the biggest mistake of my life. You're the only one for me." "The only what?" Eliza snapped. "The only option now that Plan A didn't work?" Sebastian's voice trembled. "No, it's not like that." "Goodbye, Sebastian," Eliza said firmly and hung up the phone. She sat at her desk, staring out of her office window. The October sky outside was gray and heavy with clouds, matching how she felt. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Liam, her childhood friend. "Just past a taco truck? Dinner?" The message made her smile. Liam had always known how to make her feel better, even with something as simple as tacos. But before she could reply, Sophie walked back into her office. "Sorry to interrupt again," she said. "Maya Lin is here for your 3 p.m. meeting." Eliza straightened up. Maya Lin was an important client. She was the CEO of a green energy company, exactly the type of person Eliza wanted to work with. The meeting went well. Maya was smart and confident, and her ideas were inspiring. At the end of their discussion, Eliza noticed a small ring on Maya's finger. "Sorry if this is too personal," Eliza said, "but is that a wedding ring?" Maya smiled. "No, I just got divorced, actually. This is a ring I bought for myself afterward. It reminds me that before I belong to anyone else, I belong to me." Those words hit Eliza hard. She couldn't stop thinking about them. How many times had she put Sebastian's needs before her own? How many decisions had she made thinking only about what he wanted? That night, Eliza stayed late in her office. She opened a locked drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was her engagement ring, the one Sebastian had given her. She hadn't been able to return it yet. It felt like it carried too many memories. Her phone buzzed again. It was Liam. "The tacos are getting cold." Eliza smiled and replied, "Meet me at the river in an hour." When Liam arrived at the river, the sun was setting, and the water sparkled in shades of orange and pink. Eliza was sitting on a bench, holding the small box in her hands. "No tacos?" she teased when she saw him. Liam grinned and held up a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "I thought this moment called for something special," he said. Eliza stood up, holding the ring. "I need your help with something," she said. Then, without another word, she threw the ring into the river. They both watched as it sparkled one last time before sinking into the water. "Now," Eliza said, turning back to him with a smile, "can we open that wine?" Liam poured the wine, and they sat together, talking and laughing as the last bits of sunlight faded. For the first time in months, Eliza felt like she was finally letting go of her past. As winter arrived in Boston, Eliza made another big change. She moved out of the old penthouse she had shared with Sebastian and into a smaller apartment in Beacon Hill. It was cozy and felt more like her. Sophie visited often, and their working relationship had grown into a real friendship. One day, Sophie came over with surprising news. "Did you see the headlines? Romano Enterprises is going bankrupt." Eliza was stunned. Sebastian's company was falling apart, and Christina had stolen money from it before running off to Europe with a yoga instructor. Karma, Eliza said with a laugh. It felt strange to laugh about it, but it also felt good. Just then, William, Eliza's downstairs neighbor, knocked on her door. "We need your help with the building renovations," he said. Eliza joined the meeting, where she was surprised to see Liam. He had been hired as the architect for the project. As always, Liam was passionate and professional, presenting ideas that would turn their shared terrace into a beautiful, sustainable community space. After the meeting, Eliza and Liam walked through the snowy Boston park together. "You've always known exactly what you wanted to be, haven't you?" Eliza asked. Liam shook his head. "Not really. When I was younger, I even thought about becoming a musician," Eliza laughed. "You? A musician?" "You made our music teacher cry." They both laughed, remembering the old days. But as they walked, something had changed between them. There was a new spark, an electricity in the air. Liam suddenly stopped walking. "Eliza, I need to tell you something." Eliza's heart raced. "What is it?" "I got a job offer in Seattle," Liam said. "It's for 6 months. I haven't decided yet. I wanted to talk to you first." "Why?" Eliza asked softly. Liam looked into her eyes. "Because you've become the most important person in my life," he said, "and I don't want to leave without saying that." Eliza didn't know what to say. Before she could answer, Sophie called her about an emergency at work. Eliza rushed off, but Liam's words stayed with her all day. That night, she found a note from Liam under her door. It was a drawing of the renovation project with a handwritten note in the margin. "Some constructions take time, but they're worth the wait." Weeks passed, and Eliza focused on work. She heard that Romano Enterprises had officially gone bankrupt, but she didn't feel much about it anymore. Instead, she thought about Liam and the decisions she needed to make. Before Liam left for Seattle, they met for dinner. The air between them was full of unspoken words, but for the first time in a long time, Eliza felt like her future wasn't something to be afraid of. It was something to look forward to. Eliza felt lost. Her ex-fiancé, Sebastian, had ruined everything around him. He destroyed his father's company, his reputation, and even tried to drag Eliza into his mess. She felt like her world was crumbling and she didn't know how to stop it. One day, she was on the phone with Liam, her best friend and the one person who always seemed to understand her. "You're not to blame for what Sebastian did," Liam said. His voice was calm, as if he truly believed it. Eliza let out a deep sigh. "It's not that simple," she said. "Sometimes I feel like I'm ruining something important by keeping you waiting for an answer." Liam was silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. "Eliza," he started to say, but she cut him off. "No, I need to say this," she said. You deserve to go to Seattle without anything holding you back. You shouldn't be waiting for someone like me, someone who's still trying to fix their own broken pieces." Liam's voice became soft, almost like a whisper. "What if I want to help you fix those pieces?" Tears filled Eliza's eyes and rolled down her cheeks. "Then you'd be as foolish as I was when I thought I could fix Sebastian," she said. Liam didn't argue. Instead, he said gently, "The difference is you don't need fixing. You just need to be yourself." Just then, Eliza's phone beeped. It was another call from Sebastian. She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the answer button. "It's him, isn't it?" Liam asked, his voice full of understanding. Eliza nodded, even though Liam couldn't see her. "Yes." "What do you want to do?" he asked. Eliza looked out the window at the ocean. She remembered the day she had thrown her engagement ring into the waves, feeling free and broken all at once. "I want to have dinner with you before you leave for Seattle," she finally said. She could hear the smile in Liam's voice. "Tomorrow night," he agreed. After they hung up, Eliza made a decision. She blocked Sebastian's number. It was the first time she felt like she was taking back control of her life. As she drove back to her office, the wind howled and rain poured down, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel lost. The next morning, Eliza read the news. Sebastian had checked into a rehab clinic. She felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. She truly hoped he could find a way to fix his life. That evening, when Liam picked her up for dinner, Eliza noticed something in his eyes. He looked hopeful but nervous, like he wasn't sure what the night would bring. "Before we go," Eliza said, "I want to show you something." She led him to her home office. One wall was covered with colorful papers and pictures. It was her vision board, a place where she had written her dreams and goals. "I made this after you talked about Seattle," she explained. "I realized I was so focused on my past that I wasn't thinking about my future." Liam looked at the board, his eyes stopping on one of the notes. It said, "Learn to trust again." 6 months is a long time, Eliza said, her voice trembling, "but maybe that's how much time I need to become the person you deserve." Liam turned to her, his eyes full of emotion. "You've always been so much more than I could ever deserve, Eliza," he said softly. The storm outside was loud, with thunder and rain pounding against the windows. But inside, something new was beginning to grow, a hope for the future. The next morning, Eliza went to the airport with Liam. She watched him go through security, her heart heavy with unspoken words. "Promise me you'll take care of yourself," she said. Liam smiled. "I promise." "And you promise not to work too hard?" Eliza tried to smile back. "I can't promise that," she joked. The boarding announcement echoed through the airport. Liam hugged her tightly. Eliza closed her eyes, trying to memorize the way he smelled, the way his arms felt around her. "Seattle isn't that far," Liam whispered. 2,489 miles, Eliza replied automatically. Liam laughed. "You really did your research." "I'm a numbers woman, remember?" she said, smiling through her tears. After he walked away, Eliza stood by the window, watching planes take off and land. Her phone buzzed with a reminder about a meeting. She threw herself into work, keeping busy so she wouldn't have to think about how far away Liam was. That evening, Eliza had a video call with her therapist, Dr. Monica Russell. "How are you feeling about Liam leaving?" Dr. Monica asked. "Confused," Eliza admitted. "It feels like I just found something special, only to have it taken away." Dr. Monica gave her a kind smile. "He hasn't left you, Eliza. He's giving you both space to grow." "But what if we grow apart?" Eliza asked. Dr. Monica leaned forward. "Are you more afraid of growing apart or growing together?" The question made Eliza think. She had spent so much time building walls around herself, trying to protect her heart, that she was terrified of letting anyone in. Later that night, Liam sent her a photo of Seattle. The Space Needle stood tall in the background. His message said, "Different from Boston, but it has its charm." Eliza smiled and showed the picture to Dr. Monica. "He always finds beauty in unexpected places," Eliza said. Dr. Monica nodded. "Including in you," she added. The weeks went by. Eliza worked hard during the day, focusing on her company, which was growing fast. Every evening, she had a video call with Liam. They talked about their days, their dreams, and their projects. One day, Liam said, "You seem different, happier." Eliza thought about it. He was right. She felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. One afternoon, her assistant Sophie brought surprising news. "Romano Enterprises is being bought," Sophie said, holding up a newspaper. The company, which had once belonged to Sebastian, was being taken over by Maya Lin, a young and ambitious businesswoman. Maya wanted to meet with Eliza. During their meeting, Maya said, "I know your history with Sebastian, but I believe you're the right person to help me rebuild this company." That evening, Eliza told Liam about the offer during their video call. "What do you think?" she asked. Liam smiled. "I think you've already made up your mind." "It's scary," Eliza admitted. "You're not the same person you were," Liam said. "You've grown so much." Later, Eliza's mom came over with big news. "I'm dating," her mom said, blushing. "It's Professor Martin from the university." Eliza was surprised but happy for her mom. It had been years since her dad passed, and her mom deserved to be happy. You know what's funny? Her mom said. Liam introduced us. Eliza felt her heart warm. Liam always seemed to know what people needed, even before they did. The next day, Eliza accepted Maya's offer. She began helping to rebuild Romano Enterprises, turning something broken into something new. One afternoon, while sitting on her terrace surrounded by plants Liam had designed, her phone rang. I've been offered 3 more months in Seattle, Liam said. Eliza felt her heart ache. She missed him more than ever, but she took a deep breath and said, You should take it. Are you sure? Liam asked. Eliza looked around at the little plants growing on her terrace. Yes, she said. Some things just need time. Eliza sat in her penthouse, thinking about everything that had changed. She had learned a lot about love, life, and growing as a person. She smiled as she remembered Liam, who had always encouraged her to grow, just as she was learning to give him space to do the same. It was a peaceful evening, and Eliza opened her diary, writing about how her mom was learning to love again. Her friend Maya was making good things happen, and Eliza was realizing that sometimes being apart helps us see things clearly. Eliza looked at the flowers Liam had promised her would bloom, and she felt happy. The flowers were growing slowly, but Eliza understood that sometimes changes happen so quietly that we don't notice until we're already different. Her phone buzzed with a message from Liam, a photo of the sunset in Seattle. It said, Some moments are more beautiful when shared, even from a distance. Eliza looked out the window at the sunset in Boston, and for the first time, she didn't feel so far away from him. Summer came with lots of heat, and Eliza was busy with work. She was helping with big changes at Romano Enterprises, which had become Chen Innovations. One day, Sophie, Eliza's assistant, ran into her office, looking worried. Sebastian is at reception, she said. Eliza froze. It had been months since she had seen Sebastian. He had been working on getting better after a lot of mistakes. Sophie said, He looks different, more at peace. Send him in, Eliza said after thinking for a moment. Sebastian came in slowly, looking tired but with clear eyes, no longer clouded by alcohol. You look beautiful, he said. Eliza asked him why he was there, and he explained that part of his recovery was apologizing to people he had hurt, and she was at the top of his list. I read about Chen Innovations, Sebastian continued. You're helping save my dad's company. Eliza replied, I'm just doing my job. Sebastian smiled sadly and said, You've always been better than me at everything, even moving on. Just then, Eliza's phone rang. It was Liam. Sebastian guessed it was him, the man who had always loved Eliza. He deserves you more than I ever did, Sebastian said before leaving. Later, Eliza called Liam back, but he didn't answer. Hours later, he sent her a message, apologizing for a difficult day and asking if they could talk that night. Eliza spent the rest of the day thinking about the conversation with Sebastian and wondering what she should say to Liam. When they finally spoke, Liam seemed tense. He told Eliza he had an amazing job offer in Seattle, working with one of the biggest architecture companies in the country. Eliza was shocked. Permanent? She asked. Yes, Liam said, his voice full of excitement. Eliza smiled, even though her heart was heavy. You deserve it, she said. Liam asked about Sebastian, and Eliza explained that Sebastian had come to apologize and was getting better. After a long silence, Liam asked, Have you forgiven him? Forgiven him? Eliza answered, I don't know if it's about forgiveness, but about accepting that sometimes things need to break down before we can build something new, like upside. It's not fair to put all this on you now. Later, Eliza went up to the terrace to think. The plants Liam had designed were now fully grown, just like the changes in her life. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mom. Love doesn't have an expiration date, dear. Sometimes it just needs the right moment. Eliza smiled and wrote in her diary, Today, the past and the future collided in my present. Sebastian came to make peace with who he was, while Liam makes me question who I can be. She thought about how life sometimes gives us choices that aren't really choices, but just different ways to become who we are meant to be. Later, Eliza got a message from Maya. There was a meeting in Seattle tomorrow with potential investors, and Maya wanted Eliza to come. Eliza stared at the message, feeling nervous. Seattle, she thought. That's where Liam was. She replied, "I'll be there," and sent Liam a message saying she would be in Seattle. He quickly replied, "Dinner?" Eliza agreed. "I think it's time for some conversations that can't be done by video." The next day, Seattle welcomed Eliza with rain, much cooler than the heat she had left behind in Boston. After a successful meeting with the investors, Eliza and Maya celebrated with coffee. Maya suggested opening an office in Seattle, and Eliza felt unsure, knowing that Liam's decision was also tied to Seattle. Her phone buzzed again. It was Liam. "Are we still on for dinner?" he asked. Eliza followed the address Liam had sent her, and soon she found him waiting on the sidewalk under a black umbrella. Her heart skipped a beat seeing him again after so many months. "Welcome to Seattle," Liam smiled. They walked together through a neighborhood of trees until they reached a beautiful two-story house. "This is my project," Liam said, unlocking the door. "This is why I was offered the permanent job." The house was stunning, made of wood and glass, blending perfectly with nature. Liam showed Eliza around, and she was amazed by the design. "It's amazing," she whispered, touching one of the wooden walls. "Come on, I want to show you something else," Liam said. He led her upstairs to an office with a panoramic view of Seattle. On a table, there were plans for new projects. "Are these ideas for Boston?" Eliza asked. Liam nodded. "Yes, projects I could develop there." Eliza froze, feeling confused. "But you've already decided to stay here," she said softly. Liam smiled gently. "Eliza, sometimes there are choices in life that aren't really choices. Our hearts already know what to do." He paused and added, "I've been building something incredible here, but every idea always brought me back to Boston. Back to you." Tears filled Eliza's eyes as she looked at him. "I can't let you give up this opportunity because of me," she whispered. Liam wiped away a tear from her cheek. "I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing Boston. The firm offered me a chance to open an office there, and I want to do it with you." "I needed to be sure," Liam said. "Not about the job, but about us." The rain outside became stronger, creating a curtain of water on the windows. The sound of the drops made everything feel calm. "You know what's funny?" Eliza said, her voice a little shaky. "I came to Seattle ready to tell you that I was going to open an office here and we'd try to make it work." Liam laughed softly. "Always trying to fix everything, aren't you? Old habits," he said. He held up his hands. "Some things don't need to be fixed. They just need to be lived." The dinner they planned was forgotten. Instead, they ordered Chinese food and sat on the office floor, talking like they used to. Eliza talked about meeting Sebastian and how free she felt after. Liam talked about his months in Seattle and how every new achievement made him think of her. "Do you remember that photo from our graduation?" he asked suddenly. "The one on my vision board? That day, I had planned to tell you how I felt. I even wrote a speech." Eliza smiled. "And why didn't you?" "Because you were so excited about your place in business school, so focused on your dreams," Liam explained. "I realized we needed to live our lives separately first before we could build something together." Now Liam stood up, holding out his hand. "I think we're finally ready to build something new together." The rain stopped, leaving Seattle looking shiny and wet under the evening lights. From the top of the house, the city looked like a field of stars. Eliza took his hand. "Are we going back to Boston?" "Back home," he corrected her softly. When they returned to Boston, everything began to change. Autumn painted the trees on the common in shades of red and gold. Eliza oversaw the installation of furniture in Harrison Partners' new office, which now took up an entire floor of the building. "The architects are arriving next week to start renovations upstairs," Sophie told her, looking at her tablet. "Liam has already approved the designs." Eliza smiled when she heard his name. In the last few weeks since Seattle, their lives had started to come together in new and old ways. Miss Harrison, Sophie interrupted her thoughts. Maya Lin is on the line. The conversation with Maya was short but important. Chen Innovations was doing well, and people were starting to hear good things about Sebastian Romano. He's really changing, Maya said. Sometimes we need to lose everything to find our true purpose. After work, Eliza drove to Liam's new office in the South End. The space was still being worked on, but already showed signs of his unique ideas. Recycled glass walls, vertical gardens, and lots of natural light. I like the new sign, she said as she walked in, referring to the sign that said, Foster Sustainable Architecture. Liam came out from behind a pile of plants, his face covered with paint. I'm still not used to this, he said, looking around the space. To what? Eliza asked. Having my own office, he said, to the idea that I'm finally building something that's truly mine. He paused. I mean ours. Us. Eliza's heart raced. Since Seattle, they had agreed to take things slow, building their relationship the same way Liam built his projects. Speaking of building, she said, Mom wants us to have dinner with her and Professor Martin on Sunday. Oh, so now it's official? Liam smiled. Apparently, he proposed to her yesterday. Eliza smiled. Vivian at 58 was giving herself a new start. She's overjoyed, Eliza said. She says it's never too late to start again. Liam wrapped his arms around Eliza as they looked out at the sunset through the office windows. Your mom was always wise, he said. Eliza turned to him. Do you regret waiting so long for us? He thought for a moment before answering. No, every moment brought us exactly where we needed to be. That evening, walking hand in hand across Boston Common, they met Sebastian. It was a short meeting, just a nod and a polite smile, but Eliza felt a peace she hadn't expected. The man who had once hurt her heart now seemed far away, like the leaves blowing in the autumn wind. At home, Eliza updated her vision board. Next to the old graduation photo, there was now a new one of her and Liam in Seattle, smiling in the rain. Between the two pictures, there were years of growing, learning, and finally, finding each other. Her phone buzzed with a message from Maya. Board meeting tomorrow. I have an interesting proposal to discuss. More work? Liam asked, noticing her thoughtful look. There's always more to build, she smiled. Speaking of building, Liam hesitated, then reached into his briefcase. He pulled out project plans and designs for a house. Not just any house, but one that mixed the old and new, combining the traditions of Boston and Seattle with innovation. It's beautiful, Eliza whispered, looking at the details. It's ours, Liam said softly. If you want it, he added nervously. Have you already bought the land? Eliza asked in surprise. That lot in Brookline? Liam smiled nervously. I know it's a big step. It's perfect, she said, tears of happiness in her eyes. Later, sitting on the terrace that Liam designed, they looked out over Boston. Eliza thought about how life sometimes draws perfect circles. Here she was, planning a future with the man who had always been in her past, building something new on old foundations. What are you thinking about? Liam asked, noticing her quiet thoughts. About how some things need to be torn down so we can build something better, she said. He smiled, understanding, and some things just need the right moment to bloom. Night fell over Boston, and the city lights shone like stars. Eliza thought about her mother finding love again, about Sebastian rebuilding his life, about Maya turning failures into successes, and about herself finally learning that true love isn't rushed but carefully built with time, patience, and a solid foundation. Winter came to Boston with a huge snowstorm that covered everything in white, making everything feel clean and new. Eliza watched the snow fall from the office she had set up in the new house. Liam's project was moving fast, even with the snow. The special glass walls let in light and kept the house warm, making it feel like they were both inside and outside at the same time. The furniture arrives next week, Sophie said, looking at her list. She had become not just a great assistant, but a good friend, helping with both the office and the new house. Just then, Liam appeared in the doorway, snow melting on his coat. "We have a visitor," he said. Maya walked in, looking elegant in her red coat. "Impressive," she said, looking around the space. "Exactly what I imagined for the next step." "The next step?" Eliza asked, curious. Maya smiled. "Chen Innovations is starting a sustainable development division. We want to bring green technology together with architecture, and we want you two to lead the project." The room was quiet for a moment. "A partnership?" Liam asked, already thinking about the possibilities. "More than that," Maya said. "A fusion of talents. Eliza's business skills, your vision, and our technology can change the real estate market." Eliza and Liam looked at each other. It was a unique chance to build something together, not just in their personal lives, but professionally too. "We need to think about it," Eliza said carefully. Maya left, and they walked through the house that was still being built. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet, empty rooms. "What do you think?" Liam asked, stopping in front of the big window in the living room. "I think it's scary," Eliza said. "Mixing work and personal life is like mixing the past and the present." Liam smiled, thinking about his own past. Just then, Eliza's phone rang. It was her mother, Vivian, who sounded very happy. "The wedding plans with Professor Martin are almost ready," Vivian said. "Are you coming for dinner tonight? Ethan wants to talk about some ideas for the ceremony." Dinner at Vivian's house was cozy. Professor Martin, who liked medieval books, had changed the mood with his gentle ways. "We decided to make it small," Vivian said, pouring more wine. "Just family and close friends in the university garden," Ethan added, his eyes shining as he looked at Vivian. "That's where we met." Eliza smiled as she watched her mother. She looked younger and full of life. Love had that power to change people. Liam spoke up. "We got an interesting proposal today," he said. Eliza realized something. All the big changes in my life began with a moment of courage, she thought to herself. Later that night, back at the house under construction, they stood in the living room again. The snow had stopped, and the full moon shone through the windows. "Do you remember when you showed me the projects in Seattle?" Eliza asked softly. "You said some decisions aren't really choices because our heart already knows. I think this is one of those." Liam smiled. "So we're going to do it. Let's build something amazing." He pulled her close, and they danced slowly in the empty room, with only the sound of their breathing and the gentle wind outside. "You know what's funny?" Eliza said, resting her head on his chest. "A year ago, I was planning a wedding with the wrong person, and now I'm building a life with the right person." Liam kissed her forehead. "One step at a time," he said. Eliza laughed. Later, Eliza wrote in her diary, "A year ago, I thought my life was over. Today, I realize it was just beginning. Mom is showing me that love has no age. Maya has taught me that failures can turn into opportunities. And Liam taught me that sometimes we need to put our plans aside and just build on the foundation that time and love have given us." The snow started falling softly over Boston again, covering the tools and scaffolding left by the workers. Eliza looked out the window, thinking about how each snowflake was special, just like every moment that had brought her here. "Ready to go?" Liam asked, holding out his hand. "Home to the future?" Eliza said, smiling. Spring came early that year, bringing the sweet smell of cherry blossoms and new possibilities. The university garden was full of flowers for Vivian and Ethan's wedding. It looked like a fairy tale, just right for Professor of Medieval Literature and his bride. Eliza was helping her mom get ready in the little study that had become the bride's room. Vivian looked beautiful in a simple light blue dress. "Are you nervous?" Eliza asked, fixing her mom's silver hair. "No," Vivian smiled. "At 60, you learn that some things don't need to be explained." A soft knock came on the door. It was Liam, dressed in a dark suit. "The flowers have arrived, and Ethan is about to lose it, quoting old books," he joked. Vivian laughed. Can you check the music for me? Liam will help me with the veil, Vivian asked. When Eliza left, Vivian took Liam's hand. Thank you for taking care of her all these years. I didn't, Liam said softly. Yes, you did, Vivian smiled, even when she didn't know she needed help. The ceremony was small but full of emotion. Ethan even quoted old books during his vows, making everyone laugh and cry. Vivian was calm, as if every part of her life had prepared her for this moment. At the reception, Eliza noticed someone watching from a distance. It was Sebastian, her old teacher. Do you want me to ask him to leave? Liam asked, sensing Eliza's tension. No, Eliza said, smiling. The past has a place in celebrations, too. Sebastian came over and greeted them both. It was a beautiful ceremony, he said. I've been sober for a year. I've learned that sometimes losing things helps us find the right path. Liam gave Eliza's hand a gentle squeeze. I heard about your project with Chen Innovations. You're going to do something amazing, Sebastian added. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find our way, Eliza said without thinking, repeating something Maya had once said. The party went on late into the night. Vivian and Ethan danced like they were young again. Sophie, who had become part of the family, chatted with Maya about upcoming projects. Do you want to dance? Liam asked, holding out his hand. They danced under the soft lights and cherry blossoms. Eliza rested her head on Liam's shoulder. I was thinking about circles, she said. Life sometimes takes us exactly where we need to be, even if it's by the longest route. Like us, like all of us. Like Mom finding love again. Sebastian finding redemption. Me finding my way back to you, Eliza added. Liam spun her around, making her laugh. You know what's funny about circles? They have no end. At that moment, Vivian threw her bouquet, and in a twist of fate, Sophie caught it. She blushed when she saw one of the architects from Liam's office looking at her. Eliza smiled. Later, as the party slowed down, Eliza found her mom sitting alone, looking at the stars. Are you happy? Eliza asked, sitting next to her. More than I thought possible, Vivian said, holding Eliza's hand. Eliza looked at Liam, who was talking to Ethan about restoring a medieval library. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Vivian smiled. Your father used to say that love is like architecture. It needs a strong foundation, time to build, and constant care. Eliza laughed. Liam would say the same thing. As the stars began to fade, Eliza wrote her final diary entry. Today I saw a new beginning come from a happy ending. Mom and Ethan showed us that love never runs out of time. Sebastian reminded us that we can always change, and Liam taught me that sometimes destiny is not a final place, but a circle that brings us home. Ready? Liam asked, appearing beside her with their coats. Eliza closed her diary and looked at the garden where so many stories had come together. Always, she said. They walked into the future they had built together, not just with bricks and glass, but with time, patience, and a love that, like the best buildings, would last forever. The end. If you could rebuild your love story, what would you keep as a foundation? And what would you take away to start again? Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way, you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.